Hello and welcome everybody to our video. My name is Sharon Keenan and I'm here with my friend and colleague Fiona Hughes.
Hello, nice to meet you all.
And together we are working on a project, and this project is about death and dying, and we've called ourselves Death's Door, and because we're opening a door onto the subject of death, dying, grief and loss. We are both flower essence practitioners and producers, and we both work in the area of end of life and have both walked with grief in very significant ways as well. So we just felt a real hot calling to come together and to share resources and ways that you can learn how to find ways to express your own grief and find resources to help empower you around this subject, and also to know that it's perfectly safe for you to honor all of your feelings around grief and that all of your feelings are valid. As I say, our specialist subject is flower essences, and these hold a specifically profound and gentle way to support us through all different aspects of the grief process, dying and beyond. And today we're going to share with you a few essences that you may find helpful, and also just open that door a little bit on letting you know that there are resources available, and also ways that you can stay in touch with us and our future work and our events that are coming down the line this year. Okay, so we're going to start with Fiona's going to share some essences with you and some background to grief. So Fiona, if I can hand over to you now.
Thank you. Grief is as unique as the individual experiencing it. There's no rights or wrongs, there's no stages, there's no patterns or rules. It can feel like being adrift in a sea, uncharted waters. At times it can be calm, and at times it can just erupt into turbulence and massive waves and completely swamp us. And the most insignificant things can trigger us back into that feeling of despair. Some of the common themes experienced with grief can be intense sadness, emotional pain, guilt, feeling hopeless, empty, isolated, alone, thoughts going round and round your head and unable to stop them, lack of joy, feeling worthless, loss of identity. There's so many emotions associated with it. The three essences I've chosen are for grief that could have been a bit hidden or from the past that you've carried with you a long time. The first one is called Sturt Desert Pea, and it's a bush essence from Australia. The bush essences are really robust physical essences, probably because of the landscape they're made in. Sturt Desert Pea is the flower emblem of South Australia, and there are Dreamtime stories of grief associated with Sturt Desert Pea by some of the Aboriginal tribes there. It works on past grief that has happened a long time ago and has been deeply buried, and you've been unable to access or release it, and it gently filters down, finds the grief and helps you release it safely. It's an incredibly powerful essence. The second one I've chosen is pine, and I found that really useful with hidden grief or grief that may have happened as a child that you've carried for a long time, and you've taken on guilt for what happened, and you've carried that guilt around with you. It's weighed heavily on your shoulders, it's pulled you down. You may even apologise for things that aren't your fault. And using pine is like smelling the aroma in a pine forest, and it just clears you and releases all that burden and lightens your load and helps you to see where that grief has been and to gently release it. My third essence is one of my own from Gaia's Blessing, and that was co-created in Savanac Forest with the most ancient hawthorn tree. It's called Ancient Heart Wisdom, and it's about bringing us back to the ancient wisdom in our hearts, basically our soul wisdom, and connects us with the wisdom of Gaia, and just holds us really, really strongly in our hearts so that we can find peace, so that we can find meaning and stability. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. That's really beautiful. And yeah, just even as you're talking, I'm, feeling the gentle and the softening effects of those essences, that we can call on, we can work with, to help us, as you say, especially that hidden grief, that early grief that can often be there, and then that can affect us when we have later grief in life. If we haven't dealt with the unresolved early grief, then it can make what comes along later in life even more difficult to process and difficult to find a way through. So that's a really beautiful a beautiful sort of message there, and literally opening the door to know that we can find support for these long held buried feelings within us. So yeah, thank you. So
Thank you.
and so three essences that I've chosen to look at in this section are, first of all, the essence to help with that, one of the states of grief. I mean, as Fiona was saying, there's so many aspects to grief, and there's no rules about grief. There's no it's very individual, as individual and unique as we are. But one of the themes that can often many people can experience is the feeling of overwhelm, just feeling completely overwhelmed by what's happened, and not being able to cope with the loss, the shock, but also on a very practical level. If someone close to you has recently died, then you've got the funeral to arrange, and arranging a funeral, if you've ever done this, is extraordinarily complicated, and there are many pieces of information that need to be dealt with really quickly at a time when you're actually the most emotionally disabled to do anything. So the essence that came in for overwhelm is the batch essence of elm. And elm, when we work with the energy of elm, it just helps us to process whatever's going on, these massive feelings, this massive responsibilities perhaps, and shifts that we have to take in our lives. Elm is just phenomenal to help us just to deal with that overwhelm. And anyone that's kind of been around batch flowers will know, or often we use the phrase elm for overwhelm. So it's very easy to remember. And sometimes I think when I first learned about essences, I think I was very overwhelmed because I started to discover all these amazing little genies and bottles that could help with so many emotions. And I thought, oh, I need all of them. And sometimes I still do. I think I need all of them. So whenever I go into that space, I just know I need some elm. So elm is a really beautiful essence and very easy to get hold of as well. And the next essence that I really wanted to mention today is one of the key essences for shock, because obviously that is one of the key elements of shock, of death, is that even if the person that we've lost we've known for some time, perhaps they've had an illness for some time, and maybe we've been caring for them through that illness, when they do actually go, it's still a massive shock, because it's just a huge shock because that person is no longer there, and that can be very difficult to calibrate. So there's a wonderful essence. There are lots of essences that we have for shock in the flower essence community, but the one that I really have called on a lot is the Alaskan essence of soul support. And soul support is a real spiritual emergency rescue that also helps us to stay very grounded and very aligned in our bodies when we're dealing with intense shock. So I've used that a lot myself, and I've shared it a lot with clients and family members. So yeah, soul support is just a very beautiful essence to helping us stay very clear, aligned and grounded when we're going through, when we hear shocking news. And it's something you can take ongoing as well. I mean, we'll be explaining in other videos and in our trainings and meetings about how you can use essences, but you can certainly keep it ongoing. You can use it ongoing for shock and a little bit like Fiona was saying about unresolved grief and early grief that can be hidden. A lot of us all can also contain a lot of shock that's never been really fully processed. So an ongoing shock essence like soul support is just amazing to help us just to keep the energy of shock, releasing it from our system so that we can actually process the emotions in a more meaningful way, and not just have to numb them out or whatever. I mean, there's nothing wrong with numbing out either, but it's because we've all got the processes that we go through, but sometimes we just need that extra support as we're going through that process. So soul support is one I would definitely like more people to know about. And then the third essence is actually one of my own essences from the Earth Song Essence range, and it's known as Healing Grief. And it was actually made, interesting, me and Fiona were just discussing about the essences from our own ranges that wanted to come forward, and they were both made in forests, woodlands. Healing Grief was made in the New Forest, and it helps us to sort of really keep moving through the processes of grief and shock and loss, and it helps to work on a sort of more of a mental level. I mean, there's an awful lot of heartbreak and emotional feelings that go through with grief, but something I've realized from my own grief journey is a lot of grief can be actually quite mental, is that we find it hard to process mentally what's happened, and we can't reconcile what's actually happened, and we can get and the phrase that I use is you can be quite frozen with grief and not able to move through it. And it's interesting, but both of our essences from our own ranges work with the energy of nature very strongly. I mean, all of these essences are working with nature, that's connecting with nature in a beautiful way through the essences. But specifically, the Healing Grief, it helps us to connect with all the rhythms and cycles of nature, spring, summer, autumn, winter. And as in life, we need to go through all those cycles. And when death happens, there can be a part of our energy system that doesn't want us to be in winter time. It doesn't want us to be stuck and frozen. Or in autumn time, which is more the tears coming. A part of our system perhaps wants us to stay in spring and summer when things are just budding and in their fullness. But one of the gifts of grief is it helps us to appreciate and accept that life is made up of all of these seasons, and coming to terms with grief and having tools to help with grief helps us to relieve the pain of grief when we're in it, but also that ultimately helps us to enjoy life even more, because we're actually able to move through all of those rhythms and cycles and all those seasons with a deeper appreciation for every single one of them, not having to hide or fear or avoid one of those because it just feels too difficult to go there. So yeah, so those are some essences that we hope have just given you perhaps some inspiration and perhaps a little knowing that you can go to support yourself, perhaps others as well, family members, loved ones, at different phases of your grief process and your journey. So yeah, so that's really what we wanted to share with you today. We also wanted to invite you to come and join us in our Facebook community, Death's Door. It's a free community. You can come in. We'll ask you a few questions as you come in the door, but you're very welcome to come in. And also, and in there you can find out more about mostly essences to support you, because that is our focus, and that's what we've identified is the thing that's helped us the most through our grief journeys. And we look around and can't see that. We kind of see that missing in other areas, and we just kind of have a strong wish and a passion to sort of open that conversation out a bit more. And also there'll be other resources in there and other ways that you can connect with other people who are working in this area, the area of end of life, death and dying. And also we're both also celebrants and have a strong passion to help people when it comes to arranging their own funerals or funerals for loved ones. So we've also got a wealth of resources and knowledge around that as well that we're happy to share with you. in there as well. So yeah, please come and join us there. We've also got an event coming up in July. We're running we found a beautiful space in the heart of the Somerset countryside, in the heart of nature, where we are running a wild camp, a 4-day camp called Flowers from the Forest. And we'll be sharing more about essences there. We'll be having grief circles. We'll be doing circle dancing, working with essences, particularly the elm, the energy of elm, to help us with overwhelm, and connecting with each other and sharing resources in that space as well. So you're very welcome to come and join us there. The information of that will also be in the Facebook group. So and we'll share it with you in other ways as well. So yeah, please come and join us. If you want to know a bit more, like I say, I put the links in this video, and also the links to both Fiona and my essence as well. So if you want to explore those a bit more, you're very, very welcome. Okay, so thank you for taking time, and hope to connect again with you very soon. Okay, so bye from me, bye from Fiona.
Bye from me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks very much.